I'm author and critic David Agranoff. I'm a horror and science fiction author, critic, and researcher. In this podcast, I wanted to provide in-depth interviews and panel discussions with everyone from New York Times bestselling authors to researchers, musicians, and anyone I find interesting. Welcome to Postcards from a Dying World. Hello and welcome to another special episode of Postcards from a Dying World. Depending upon when this comes out, I believe this shall be episode 186. So we're gearing up to 200 and I haven't figured out what the hell I'm going to do for 200, but that's okay because I've got a real special one for 186. What we will be doing soon, and I know I keep saying this, but I promise you, I am getting back to the Science Fiction Hall of Fame series. You all keep yelling at me to return to that series, and I will be doing it. I promise. I'm just trying to get the right guess, okay? For these stories. They're very, very, very important. Some things that are coming up in this podcast that you should know about is that we are also continuing on the unproduced screenplay series and should be doing Oliver Stone's original draft for Conan here soon. So that's available on the internet, and I highly recommend you go and read it because you'll have a lot of fun when we talk about it. So that's coming up soon. So I just wanted to tell people if you wanted to read along with us. One other announcement I have to make is yesterday we had the book release party for another anthology, Dread Coast, which is John is also in. And these are all mostly San Diego writers, but a couple from other parts of Southern California writing stories that take place in Southern California to benefit victims of the wildfires in the Palisades in Los Angeles. I always have to tell Brian Asman, he keeps saying to benefit the wildfires. And I'm like, we're not benefiting the actual fires. Come on. Yes, so we had a really great event at Mysterious Galaxy yesterday. We've sold out of Dread Coast wherever we've been selling them, which is really cool. And to keep that anthology energy going, Eunice Magill is the editor of an anthology that all these folks have a story in. And we're going to talk about this anthology and the subject matter, which is something we all love, and that is space horror. And so we're going to talk in general. Yes, that's what the book looks like. We're going to talk in general about space horror eventually, and we're going to talk about our influences, and we're going to talk about our stories. But first, I'm going to introduce the folks that are here on this panel. And we're going to give kind of a thumbnail sketch of who we are, where we come from, how we got involved in writing, and all that stuff. I'm going to start with, I cannot believe, Eunice, this is the first time you've been on my podcast. I have been threatening to bring Eunice onto this show forever. She's one of my favorite people to talk about genre history with. So Eunice, tell the folks who you are and what you do.
So I write as E.S. Magill. My first name is Eunice. I am a horror writer, and lately I've been a dark fantasy writer, novelist. I've edited 4 anthologies. I'm also a horror aficionado. So if you need to know something about horror, I probably know it, especially if it's about Richard Matheson.
How big is Freddy Krueger's dick?
No.
That's a good question, Vincent. Thank you.
Literature.
We're asking the real questions here.
Mhm.
Yeah. So Eunice and I are one of our passions is the history of the genre and making sure that the young bucks understand the history and where folks come from, which anyone who listens to this podcast knows I talk about the history mostly of science fiction on this podcast, but we are both equally passionate about knowing your elders in the horror community as well, which, by the way, the science fiction horror communities were kind of one thing as they were kind of growing up together. And this is particularly important in the year 2025, because next year, 2026, is officially the 100th anniversary of the term science fiction. Which, by the way, we will be doing all kinds of celebrations for and events and things. One of which will be the Philip K. Dick Festival in Fullerton next year. But and then I think it's RavenCon in Virginia. They're doing a big 100th birthday for science fiction celebration. Now, I know what you're thinking. The genre existed before the term, but we're talking about the 100 years since the term was created and popularized by Hugo Gernsback and Amazing Stories. So let's go next to Mike. Mike, you want to tell the folks who you are and what you do?
Yep, I am Mike D. McCarty. My day job is running a makeup effects studio. I've been doing makeup effects for about 30 years and a lot of horror films and things for a good long while now. And also a writer.
This is a cool day job. You know what
It
I'm saying?
is. It's also a stressful day job. I tear my hair out a lot because, producers want things yesterday. And what do you got off the shelf? And do you have anything laying around? And, I got your budget or your bid, but I'm wondering if you could go down from there. So, yeah, it's not the most fun at times, but again, every day is different. Every time you get to do a decapitation, there's something different about it. Like, oh, the body's hanging upside down, or this one's going to be underwater, or whatever the fuck it is.
Well,
so
his ministry said every day is Halloween for you. So
absolutely. So yeah, it is a fun day job. I kid about it being a nightmare, but it is fun. And yeah, a bit of writing as well. I had a novel come out through Bad Moon a few years ago. I've had a few short stories published. And I've always bounced in and around the horror writing community, and I've known Eunice for quite a bit. So we were sitting at the table the night we came up with this idea.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll get to how that came for after we get through all the introductions. But Vincent, do you want to take the next spot?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Vincent V. Cava. I've been writing for as long as I can remember. This is all I do. I don't have another job. It's certainly not one as cool as a makeup effects artist. That would be or running a special effects studio. That would be awesome. Most of my time I spend in front of my laptop in this dusty old room. I guess I've written for stage, I've written for screen, I've written books, you see, published by Big Fives, whatever. And somehow I keep conning these idiots to give me money to write more stuff.
Hey,
that's what you want.
The dream, right? Kathryn, you're next.
Hi, I'm Kathryn Blanche. I write mostly dark fantasy, typically dystopian fantasy. And I've got a background in martial arts and stage combat, so writing action is kind of my thing. And yeah, my day job's not so interesting. It's a desk job, but I love writing. I try to write every night for an hour or so if I can.
Well, my day job, I had a desk thrown at me yesterday or 2 days ago. So just so you know.
Now you got to tell that story because that's interesting.
I hope you're
I work with kids with autism, so I've had many a desk thrown at me. But it happens less so with I've been doing this a long time, and ABA methods are a lot more progressive than they used to be, and so we have a lot less desks thrown at us these days.
I feel like you would learn to bolt them down or something after a point.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you can't predict antecedent management. You just can't. Like I have to say, I am very good at calming kids down very quickly. So if I can get but anyways, that's besides the point. Now, the shortest transmission from you guys to me would be John Cohn. So John, you want to tell the folks who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hey, I'm John Cohn. I'm also a horror writer. I have 5 novels out right now, mostly horror with a healthy dose of satire in there. I'm also a professional board game designer. Been a board game designer for about a decade. I'm currently the lead designer for a company called Beyond Killer Games. We do lots of horror games based on cult hit horror movies like Basket Case, Black Christmas, Thanksgiving, which Mike knows plenty about.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was cute when I introduced you to Mike.
Oh, that was a great
Yeah.
time at Stokercon. I had just been finishing making the Thanksgiving game with Eli Roth, and then in walks the real McCarty, which was a very, very cool, kind of surreal moment.
Yes. The McCarty in Thanksgiving is named after me because I've done plenty of things with Eli. So yeah, it's a nice
Very
little
cool.
homage.
Absolutely. And last, and certainly not least,
Maybe
probably
least.
the most, Eric Guinard, please tell the folks who you are and what you do. You've been on this podcast before.
I have, and it is great to come back. I'm appreciative that I did not embarrass myself too much the first time around, and that you have deemed me worthy to return. But I'm Eric J. Guinard. I am primarily a short story author, speculative and horror fiction. I'm also an anthologist. Like Eunice, I love anthologies, and I have edited and published many, many anthologies. I also run a small indie press called Dark Moon Books out of Southern California. And then I too have the corporate desk job like Kathryn. It's so dull. But I'm a writer though. I'm a technical writer, so I can always say technically I write all day long.
Right. Well, hey, there are worse gigs to have behind a desk.
Oh yeah, indeed. No desk is thrown at me as a technical writer. So.
That's right. So this project was birthed at Stokercon. Eunice, you want to tell folks like how this space horror anthology started?
So Mike will help me tell this story. So in the great tradition of cons, when you're sitting around at night, somebody always says, let's do an anthology. And at the moment, it just seems like the most brilliant idea. So it was the night of the banquet at Stokercon. And Mike and I went to dinner, and we picked the biggest table in the hotel restaurant because we got a lot of friends. We knew that people would come over. And the first person we invited over was Kathryn. She walked in, she went to the back of the restaurant. She's sitting there by herself. And I said to Mike, should we go get her? Should we go get her? And Mike's like, yeah, but don't be weird about it.
We didn't want to think we were inviting her to something like, hey, why don't you come hang out with us? We've got a room. It's 203.
We like your vibe.
Firm believer that, when you're at a con and you have a lot of friends and you see somebody alone, and you go get that person. Do not let that person be by themselves. That is just the worst feeling in the whole world.
It's a great point.
So everybody came over, Eric, we had Kathryn, Vincent, a couple of other people.
I don't remember that.
Yep. And we're all sitting there. And I wish I could say that we were drunk, because that's usually what happens when somebody says, let's do an anthology, everybody's drunk. But Mike and I were drinking coffee, and Eric was drinking tea. That's how far the mighty have fallen.
If I was there, I was definitely drunk.
You were like buzzing around the place.
But you got to clarify, this is the end of the convention. So this is days of drinking nonstop when you're like, I am burned out and toast and I need something else in my system.
Not me. No. So sober the whole time.
I got to be drunk before I get there.
Now, one thing is, I have a special position in this anthology because I was the only person, I think, in the book that wasn't actually sitting at the table. And the reason why is because I was so goddamn busy with that Stokercon, because I was part of the organizing committee, that And John was too, but for my specific task that weekend was keeping the programming going and on track. So I couldn't sit down really with anyone for more than 5 minutes the entire weekend. And so I believe, Eunice, you just basically, like, once this idea started flowing, you gave me a little bit of grace because I think I floated by the table and I don't know, I was there, but this idea happened because you guys just started talking about space horror. Am I correct?
Yeah. So you're not the only one, David. In the end, I ended up inviting people I liked. Like I met John Cohn, and I thought it would be really cool if he was in the same anthology as Mike, because there was just a little moment there. And then I also invited Casey Griffin too, because she was the chair of the Stokercon, and she has done me a lot of favors over the years, and I wanted to return that. So yeah, so
and
we're
writes really good sci-fi horror stories, like too. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're sitting there talking about space horror, and I think I said there isn't enough space horror, and everybody's like, yeah, yeah. And then I went, let's do an anthology, and I went home, forgot all about it, and then looked in my mail, and there was two stories there, one by Eric and one from John Palisano, and I tried to ignore it for a while, but then Mike said, "Are we doing this anthology?" It's like, okay.
Well, no, and I know I heard part of that conversation because I kind of floated by, and I do remember like, oh yeah, like there's good space horror. And by the way, one of the reasons why I think this anthology is such a smart idea specifically is because one of the most annoying things about the Books of Horror Facebook group is every 3 days a new person joins the group and they always post the same thing, looking for science fiction horror, right? And like people are always looking for that. Now, I have a standard response. I have the same book that I copy and paste into that because that post happens like at least a couple times a month. And I'm not even exaggerating. It happens all the time. And so I have my answer that I always give, but like having the ability to like copy and paste this anthology and say, hey, if you're looking for space horror, you know, here is one, you know, and we all have classics of space horror that we love, which we'll all get to eventually here in this conversation. But the idea of doing this anthology to me was smart because this is something that you're not only are you saying, Eunice, there needs to be more of it, but it's something people are looking for. Am I correct? I mean, you've heard this too, right, Eunice?
Yeah, and when I was doing research for my introduction, as far as novels go, there isn't a lot of space horror written by just traditional horror writers. A lot of it comes from science fiction writers. You know that as the Philip K. Dick specialist.
Yeah.
There are a few anthologies out there on space horror, but there really is not a lot. A lot of the horror that's out there is things coming from outer space to Earth. So we've got Invasion of the Bounty Snatchers by Jack Finney. We've got The Midwich Cuckoos by John Wyndham.
Who Goes There?
Yeah, and Who Goes There by John Campbell. So we've got a lot of those things coming here, but us going there, not a lot.
Well, and I mean, A.E. Von Vogt did like Voyage of the Space Beagle, which, you know, he won a lawsuit for Alien on that one. And so the science fiction writers have done this, but you're right. There's not, you know, and Richard Matheson, for example, is an author who kind of flirted those lines, although he never did anything that took place in outer space. And, but he did the third short story wise, he did like Third from the Sun and
yeah, there's an anthology that he did a long time ago.
Yeah. And so this happens, but back in the day, there was a lot of authors who played in both camps, like, you know, your William F. Nolans, your George Clayton Johnsons. They did a lot of both of that, but you know, how many straight science fiction space tales do you have by the greats of horror besides like The Jaunt by Stephen King? Like, there's not much, Robert McCammon never wrote like a space novel, right? And certainly never can you imagine Peter Straub or somebody like that? You just can't. See, you're laughing at me even suggesting the idea that Peter Straub might.
That's true.
And that's one of the things about like expanding the space horror thing and the space horror movies, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
There's a lot of those.
And but
not enough though, to be honest. There should be more.
Yeah, there could be more. Yeah. And then unfortunately there's a lot that are very lazy about it. I watched because I like to thumb around on Tubi, which is like free streaming movies with ads online. And so there's a lot of shitty movies on Tubi, which is one of the things that I actually like about it. Because
I have a shitty movie on Tubi.
What is it?
Yeah. Well, there you go. And but there was a South African movie that took place on Mars called Settlers, but there was no attempt to make it actually Mars except for the ground is it's really dusty red, right?
Yeah.
But there was no anything to make it actually other than we said they're on Mars at the beginning. And so to me, that's lazy. I don't like that. There are varying degrees of taking the science seriously, which I know Eunice and I will talk about because we went to battle on that a little bit over my story. I don't know how you guys got that with Eunice, but I want there to be some science taken seriously when I read a space horror, but we'll get into that. Let's go through the stories a little bit. Eunice, you want to why don't we go through the stories of the people that are here? I'll go last since I'm the host, but Mike, why don't you tell us just a thumbnail about your story and like what was inspired by, spoiler free, of course.
I mean, I've always been into, like I said, I don't think there's enough space horror movies, and I've always been into the idea of that isolation and waking up out of hypersleep and not knowing what's going on. And, like those opening sequences of Alien are pretty good. Alien Earth, I think, is coming along pretty nicely too. It opens kind of in the same way. But my story that I would say that's exactly what I was inspired by was coming out of hypersleep. I wanted to do a story where a character comes out of hypersleep, doesn't know what's going on, can't really remember, but feels like they might be the only person on the ship. And why are they the only person on the ship? Oh, there's a body there. Okay. Is everybody dead? And then it just becomes like a haunted house kind of thing where this character's making their way through the ship, trying to figure out what's going on. So, I mean, I've always loved that sort of like haunt feel too. Like Event Horizon, I think is a great, fun space horror movie because they come across an isolated ship and what happened to all the people that are here. And here's some bodies and here's some old, transmission tapes that show the crazy things that went on.
Space is terrifying.
Absolutely. So
the universe wants to kill you. You were designed to live on Earth. And if you're not on Earth, space wants to kill you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's cool. I actually just wrote a hyper sleep story for a Black Sabbath tribute anthology last year, so I had to stay.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome. A Black
I got the
Sabbath
story.
Tribute antho.
What's that?
Oh, I'm asking about the book.
Oh, it's called the Hand of Doom, but that's
a great name.
Yeah, it's hold on, I gotta make sure I'm not rolling on my dog.
I'm gonna have to get a link for that.
Yeah, John Shirley has a story in it too. But it
nice.
And I think John Pausano, yes, has a story. So also in our collection. But my story was I was given the songs Into the Void and Beyond the Walls of Sleep. Well, actually, I was given Into the Void, but I said I'm also taking, because we all took songs to do stories based on. And I said, I'll do Into the Void, but I also want to do the song Beyond the Walls of Sleep, and I will combine them. And so that was my mission there. So
that's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, no, it was pretty cool. So look out for that one. That's a space horror story too, actually. Just happened because Into the Void is a space horror song if you don't know that song by Black Sabbath. But yeah, sorry, I hijacked there, Mike. But
no, that's
your story called, Mike?
It's called The Directive.
Okay. And and you would say it's influenced by that whole like haunted vibe of the
it's influenced by Alien, it's influenced by Event Horizon, not knowing what's going on, waking up out of hypersleep, being confused, finding bodies, am I the only one? It was definitely the feel I was going for.
Nice. I am very excited to read it. And that should be said, it's not out yet, so most of us have only read our own stories except for Eunice, who did all the editing. Vincent, you want to go next?
Oh yeah, and I read The Directive. I liked it.
Thanks, man.
Great story. It was pretty fun. My story is called First Contact, and it's about exactly what it sounds like it's about.
You've already hooked me.
Say no more.
I'll tell you this. It is tastefully done, okay?
You didn't have to say that, Eunice.
The amount of in it is,
Eunice, I saw Eunice in Phoenix, and she was so surprised that I can actually string together a sentence she was like, oh my gosh, there was proper grammar in this. Like, why the fuck did you even ask me to be in this thing? I appreciated it, because I don't think what I had the chance to tell Eunice is I grew up on sci-fi. And my mom was a big sci-fi fanatic growing up. Every month we'd get Asimov and Analog magazines. I have hundreds of them going back to the 60s. So I really have like a love for pulp sci-fi. And I'm not talking about like weird tale stuff. That's great too, but I'm talking about like that campy, like Flash Gordon with a ray gun type of shit. And the thing is, I still read sci-fi today, and I'm like, and one of the reasons why I write horror is because I'm like, God damn, I can't keep up with these guys. These guys are smart now, like Ted Chiang and Ken Liu, and like I'm not smart. I can't get a PhD in math or something just to start writing novels. So I decided to just write like a throwback that's sort of inspired by those early campy 50s era, Golden Trinity era, where Asimov and Heinlein and Clarke were writing that era of like sci-fi, and to do a little parody. So it's about three explorers looking for life, and when they find it, one decides he wants to fuck it.
As you would.
Well, I mean, it does have something to say. I mean, it's kind of poking fun at society's obsession with sex, and how as soon as sex becomes prevalent in a story, it's all people will focus on. Sex sells. It catches headlines. So that's kind of what the story was about. It's not a hot alien babe, by the way, but they're gonna fuck it anyway. No spoilers.
Well, and one thing you should keep in mind, Vincent, I would encourage you to keep writing science fiction, is I always use this example. The class of 1947 at Berkeley High School had two very famous graduates, Ursula K. Le Guin and Philip K. Dick. Now, she went to Harvard to study French Renaissance languages, and he worked at a record store. And they were both nominated for the Hugo. Now, she won in 1974 against each other. And you look at the differences between her science fiction and his science fiction, there's room for us all, right? So she was writing very literate, very high literature science fiction. And then we have Philip K. Dick doing his thing. And so you can tell which one worked at the record store.
Philip K. Dick was a genius, though. He was on every single drug on the planet, but he was a genius. Hey, if
Mostly
sci-fi starts,
amphetamines.
hey, I just took a gig that's is paying me to write smut. It's gonna cover 1 month of work. It's gonna cover my rent for the year. So
Wow.
as soon as sci-fi starts paying, I'll consider it because I'm about the money.
Yeah. Well, hey, you got to do what you got to do. Next up, Kathryn. Tell us about your story and what the influence was.
My story is called Lucy's Wrath, and my inspiration was kind of similar to Mike's, but it's more about boarding a ghost ship that's out floating in space. And something about that for me is you just don't know what you're going to walk into. You go from your safe environment, which is still kind of hostile because you're in space and, like you guys said, everything wants to kill you. You can't go outside. So you go from that safe environment into something that's totally unknown. And, trying to unravel what's happened there, what went wrong, and how to keep yourself alive in that situation. And so that's kind of what mine focuses on, but it also kind of, focuses a little bit on confronting like the protagonist's career choices. Does she want to continue to be out here? Does she want to go back to safety on Earth or on one of the other planets, or moons? And so I think
your story also delves into rogue science too. The ethical considerations of once we get out there, what are people going to do? Who's going to monitor what?
yeah, because the ship that they board, they know initially is a lab. And what experiments are being done when you can have labs that can be so far removed from the rest of civilization. I think that creates kind of a sticky situation. So I wanted to explore that a little bit.
Very cool. John, tell us about your story and the influences.
Yeah, my story is called Meth Heads. It's also kind of like Mike's. It's waking up out of hypersleep. It's dealing with space madness from like Event Horizon, except everybody's dumb. In this one,
Nice.
the people, they're going into a cluster of stars that is a nebula cluster that's making everybody that goes through it go insane and like kill each other by hurling their shit at each other. And so the people, they decide that they're going to get through this by going into hypersleep and building an AI captain. But he's not like an AI captain like you would see in a modern sci-fi. He's AI captain like if we use the AI powers we have today. So he's dumb and he makes terrible decisions for the crew. And when they wake up, they realize they've made a terrible, terrible mistake.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I read that one too. That one was also fun.
Thank you.
It got me laughing.
That's what I aim to do. Do something kind of gross, kind of spooky, but also funny.
All right, Eric, tell us about your tale.
All right, my tale, it's really not horror. You can kind of argue there's horror elements in it, but it's more of an adventure murder mystery. And it's the background of it's kind of like how Vincent explained, like the old-fashioned, like the pulp visions of science fiction before we actually had space exploration, or kind of like the Jetsons cartoons, where people are, they're going out in outer space and they got their laser guns, and normal cars and trucks are able to fly around in outer space just by popping on some booster rockets. So that's kind of the background, and then the actual plot.
Now, see, Eric, the thing is, I always think of you as your strength is writing historical horror, right? And like diving into these back histories. So what was it like for you, like going out into the future? Was that like a very different muscle for you?
It was. That's why it was fun, because speaking of writing more of historic works, I actually based it off of Louis L'Amour plot lines. So it's more of it's a Western. So I kind of said it's a murder mystery, but it's kind of structured as a Western, like the old Chick Bowdry stories where a stranger rides into town and solves the mystery. So my story is a truck driver. He's a truck driver that flies into town, this orbiting gas station on the farthest reaches of civilization, to find out who murdered his old buddy.
Very cool. I will go, and then Eunice, you can tell us about the authors that are not here. So my story is called Sentenced in the Crucible, and it's about a prison on Mercury. And I really, part of the inspiration for it was well, I love the idea that in order to, there's only one spot on Mercury where you could live, which is exactly in the Terminator, where it's revolving because one side's too cold, one side's too hot. So I like this idea of this prison that's constantly on a track moving with the orbit of the planet. So it's always in the sun Terminator. And then I was like, well, why the fuck would you send people to that prison? Like, what did they do that was so bad that you would send somebody to that prison? And that was kind of the inspiration for the thought exercise of like trying to envision this prison. And then I center it on one person who's being transferred there. And beyond that, I'm going to let that go, but I will say that I had a really great time working with Eunice on this story for two things. One is which she really pushed me on the science, and I thought I was doing pretty good on the science because I like to do the science stuff. And so there was a lot of math involved in this story with, like, for example, like how fast Mercury spins, how many days it travels around the sun, where it's going, the speed of the ship between Earth and Mercury, the times, the distances. And Eunice and I did all that shit. And that was kind of fun. It doesn't really matter for the person reading it. I know none of you people will probably care, but we had fun doing it, for one. And two, Eunice and I argued a lot about the main character of this story. We actually had arguments about this main character. I'm not going to say why because it's a spoiler, but I really had fun talking through this character with Eunice on the story, and that was like a really fun aspect of her taking her role as editor very seriously, and me having to like be like, this is why he's this way, and then us like kind of batting it back and forth was super fun. So I just wanted to say that, Eunice.
Thank you. I may have been an English major, but I love science. I loved science all through school. I'm one of these people that reads all the pop science books. So I got a good background in science. So I'm going to go through some of the stories, three of the stories of three people who aren't here. So first is John Palisano. His story is Aviarium, a woman who's traveling. It's interstellar space travel. She's thinking about her mom. There's parallels with Wuthering Heights, but with monsters, alien monsters at the end of it. Okay. Casey
cool.
Griffith wrote Eater's Band, which is she does a lot of Western horror. And this time she did Western horror in space. So kudos for that. And the story is Pony Express delivering supplies, kind of like into another dimension, but there are these creatures that are interfering and keep humans out.
And speaking of the history, that is a grand tradition of women science fiction horror writers writing Westerns in space, because both Kathryn Lucille Moore and Lee Brackett did that quite a bit in the 40s and made a lot of money selling stories in the 30s and 40s to Weird Tales and the like that were set on Mars or Venus, that were basically Westerns in space. So, and I would recommend everyone read Northwest of Earth, the collection of C.L. Moore's Weird Tales stories, including Shambhala, which was one of the greatest vampire stories. It just happens to take place on Mars. And so I just got to shout out fellow Hoosier Kathryn Lucille Moore there. Sorry.
I think Westerns and space have always gone together. I mean, you look at the movie Outland, that's basically High Noon.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you said Christina's story is the one that
Pony Express.
Oh man, looking forward to that one too. Yeah.
And
great
then,
tradition is what I'm saying. Yeah.
And then Vanessa Fogg wrote a story called Space Roads, which is also about space truckers. We've had some interesting parallels in this anthology. We had two stories about
what are the odds?
Right. And then we've had two stories that have the word eat in it. So I don't know, we're channeling each other here. Vanessa's story, I thought it was perfect for starting the anthology because she writes about the space truckers who are traveling on these space roads and encounter the weird phenomenon of space that humans don't really understand, ships going missing, parallel universes, and it's like, that's a great story to start this anthology with. And then my story is a Dog Eat Dog, which is about sort of like a Bonnie and Clyde, two aliens on the run because the female alien, they have a bad habit of eating everything once they land on a planet. So, which is funny because I had just finished reading David Wellington's Last Astronaut, which is pretty much about the same thing, but what I did in 5 pages, he did in 300 pages.
You think aliens would have invented Ozempic?
Maybe they
I
did.
read The Last Astronaut. I feel like I read that a long time ago, but it came out about 10 years ago, right?
So. Yeah, I think it was 19, and he published it right after that strange object came into our solar system.
Oumuamua.
Oumuamua.
Yeah.
And then what's interesting is that he speculated another object coming through, which did. A second object came through, and right now we're dealing with our third object coming through, 3I Atlas. And I was reading about these objects coming into our solar system and their trajectories and all of that. And I loved the comment that somebody wrote at the end of the article. They said, this object, 3I Atlas, is chasing the other two objects. Like,
really?
Not technically, but a lot of people think that. Well, I will say the guy who's like the #1 speculator on Oumuamua and 3I Atlas is a scientist named Avi Loeb, who's like one of my favorite astronomers, and I have had him on this podcast, and we talked about Oumuamua.
He's from Harvard,
but it's great. One of the reasons I love Avi Loeb is a lot of astronomy people hate him because he speculates so much that, like, because Avi will sit in the shower and be like, well, what if this? And then he'll come up with like really wild ideas, and he explores them, like no matter how weird or speculative they are. And that's why he's fucking rad. In my opinion, Avi is great. And I'm not just saying that because I've had him on the podcast, but I have, and he's really cool. But that's interesting. So Wellington talked about, that's right, he did talk about Oumuamua in there too.
That's definitely a horror novel. That's definitely a horror novel. I just read Gravity by Tess Gerritsen. And one of the big problems with space horror is like when it leans too much to science fiction, then it becomes science fiction. And then what is it that it takes to become a horror story, right?
That's the problem with any cross-genre stuff. It's walking that fine line.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some of our favorites of space horror. To me, I have my one answer for this, which is, my general answer for space horror is there are 3 books from the classics that I think are the best examples of space horror. And that is Solaris by Stanislaw Lem. And I think that's the best literature of space horror that was ever written. And most people will find it boring because the whole crux of a lot of Lem's alien fiction, not just that one, but also his novel, His Master's Voice, is that Liam has written several novels where we just can't understand them and they can't understand us, that we're so different that we cannot understand each other at all, which is why his novel is called His Master's Voice. If you know the painting, it's the painting, His Master's Voice, is of the dog listening to a record of his person speaking, right? And how like the dog doesn't understand the record because it can't smell the person, right? And so Liam wrote this novel in the 60s called His Master's Voice that most people find so horribly boring because the entire book is scientists not understanding language. So it's not for everyone, right? I wouldn't recommend that book to everyone, but Solaris has had 2 film adaptations which don't really touch the novel, but the whole novel is like a cosmic horror like thing of like, we can't understand that they can't see us, we can't see them. There's a pulpier version of that same type of story called Beyond Apollo by Barry N. Maltzberg. It won the Campbell Award in 1974. It's considered Maltzberg's masterpiece, and it's about astronaut who goes to Venus and has and gets mind fucked by meeting aliens. And Vincent, you should be really interested in Beyond Apollo by Barry Maltzberg because he definitely fucks it. And
am I that guy? Am I that guy now?
Well, for your, it's on the same theme as your story. And Barry Maltzberg also made a lot of money selling smut in the 60s and 70s. And he was Barry Maltzberg's science fiction also blurred those lines. So Beyond Apollo is one I recommend. And then I'll give my ultimate one, and then I'll shut the fuck up and let everybody else talk about it. And that is the one that I always throw people to, and I am a Philip K. Dick guy, but The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, which is, I consider to be Phil's masterpiece, but it's also an alien invasion novel where the aliens use drugs to get into our brains and control us. Most people, when they read The Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch, which part of it takes place on Mars, don't even realize that it's an alien invasion story. It honestly took me till the second time I read it to figure out that that's what was happening. It's a drug novel, it's a space horror novel, and it's one of the most terrifying books you'll ever read. Phil wouldn't even read it to do the galley edits, and he wouldn't even reread it. He had Ray Nelson, the author who wrote the story that They Live was based on, did the galley edits because Phil wouldn't even reread it. So those are my recommendations. Let's start with Mike. What is your favorite space horror? It can be books, movies, TV, whatever.
Obviously, I'm going to lean towards movies because that's, kind of where a lot of my heart is. And even when I was a kid, when I saw the very first Alien, it was on one of those pay TV subscription services. In fact, it was called It TV or On TV, maybe. Do you remember those? It would start at 8 p.m. at night and shut off at 1 in the morning. And we saw Alien. We sat down. We were having a spaghetti dinner, and of course, he's eating some kind of pesto pasta when he gives birth to the chest burster, and that just kind of freaked me out a little bit. I mean, I was 10 years old. And I was like, this is fucking amazing. So, but yeah, I always really got into all the Alien movies. And then I started reading, the adaptations like the Alan Dean Foster stuff and, went that route. But I've never had too much as far as space horror books or novels or stories that I gravitated towards. It was always the movies. So you've got the Alien series, you've got things like Event Horizon. More recently, you've got things like Pandorum. I don't know. Did you guys see that Pandorum?
I actually thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, that movie's not bad, and people don't necessarily talk about it very often.
But you're talking to the guy that likes the Luc Besson, Guy Pearce sci-fi prison movie Lockout. I actually like that movie, and so my opinion is questionable when it comes to movies.
I mean, anything Luc Besson touches, or at least at some point in his life, he had a really good wide swath there where he was just golden, and then it started to really fade off. But yeah,
he writes villains very well, like Stephen King does.
Yeah, totally.
I think Stephen King and Luc Besson write the meanest, most awful villains.
Mm-hmm.
Vincent, do you have any favorites of space horror?
Oh man, I'm a little unprepared for this question, but I guess I will say what I think is personally, and I don't know if this is a hot take. I'm not sure if I would call it space horror, definitely sci-fi horror. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I feel like, and I'm not trying to gas you up, man. I know the name of this podcast, but I feel like The Second Variety by Philip K. Dick, it might be the scariest story I've ever read. I find it absolutely horrifying.
You are correct, sir.
Yeah. There's a little bit about rich people living on the moon, so maybe that counts, but it's a post-apocalyptic Earth. I think when he wrote it, it was the height of the Cold War, so Russia, America just destroyed everything, and dude's sitting in these American soldiers are sitting there, and they see a Russian come over the hill, and their little robot like tear him to shreds. Well, they find out he had like an SOS message, and so they send some unlucky American dude across the hill to go see what the Russians wanted, and along the way he finds this little poor kid who's like they're like a refugee, like all exactly how you would imagine, dirty, cute, bandaged or whatever. And he's like walking to the bunker where the Russians are, and they get up and they're like, get the fuck down. They blast that kid away. He's freaking out, and they pull him in the bunker, and he sees the kid like kind of get up, and just walk off. And they're like, yeah, so you know how you guys made these like robots as weapons? Well, they're kind of improving on themselves, and we know there's 3 varieties. There's this kid, there's like an old lady, but we don't know what the second variety is. All we know is they want to kill us all, and they want to get up to the moon and kill everybody left on the moon too.
Yeah, they want to exterminate
I love
humans.
That story.
Well, and one of the things that makes that like Phil's worst absolute nightmare, and it's part of a PowerPoint presentation I'm doing at a conference coming up, is Phil, his biggest theme is empathy. And one of the things about the second variety is that robots don't understand empathy, but they know how to exploit it. And that is one of the things that makes that story so horrifying. So yes, I agree. That to me is his short masterpiece. So I agree with you.
Yeah, that and the skull. Just the skull is my favorite bootstrap paradox story.
Yeah, that is a good one too. A very early story too by Phil. Kathryn, do you have any favorite space horrors or things that were big influence on you?
I don't know that it really influenced this story too much, but one that's actually influenced my other writing has actually been Annihilation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that blending of what's known and unknown, what's familiar and not really knowing what to expect. And then as well as like kind of the psychological aspect of it, especially with the fight at the end and the creature that kind of mirrors the protagonist. Something about that really left an impression on me and just felt so eerie and creepy that I'm like, if I was in that situation, I don't even know what I would do. I would just break down.
Yeah.
So
and I do think there's an argument for that one being science fiction and being horror and fitting into this genre, because it is Earth-based, but I do think it's changing the Earth. But I also think 2001, there's an argument that 2001 is much horror as it is science fiction as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What about the Expanse novels? I read the first couple of those and I loved the TV show as well, but that definitely has some horror elements.
Oh, certainly. And I definitely, well, Star Trek did horror a lot too. So,
Sure.
there are definitely episodes of Star Trek that are straight up horror. They did zombies this season on Strange New Worlds, and they named the planet Foree. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but
no.
The planet that had Klingon zombies on it was named Foree too, named after Ken Foree, which is great.
That's pretty awesome.
Every episode of The Next Generation before Riker grew his beard was horror.
That's true. Well, the secret of the Berman era of the 90s with sci-fi, with horror and Star Trek is Brandon Braga, who was one of the story editors and a major writer there, wanted to write The Twilight Zone, did not want to write Star Trek. And so he basically tried to put horror into every episode. But I hear you, Vincent. I hear you. Like the Riker without a beard is very hard to watch. John, do you have a favorite space horror that maybe we've mentioned or not mentioned already?
Yeah. So I think like as a biggest influence on me in space horror, science fiction horror, it's when there's an entity that's like using people's thoughts or fears against them. I always think that that's so frightening, is having something that you are already afraid of, but you can't control your thoughts and it gets kind of takes over. So for space horror, it takes place on a spaceship, but it's not in space. It's Michael Crichton's Sphere, where they're undersea, and all of these things that are freaking them out are manifesting and killing them. And then I read a book recently that did that also, a kind of a similar trope really well. It was called Extinction Dream by Andrew Nyberg, where people are in space and they're fighting a war against aliens, but the way that they wage war is through hallucinations and mind projection. The aliens will give people hallucinations of them in their most like treasured memories doing the most horrific things to their loved ones. And they're trying to literally, they have to fight off those hallucinations to fight off the alien attacks. It's such an interesting concept to me, and I love to see it explored in different ways.
I just started watching. I'm 2 episodes into a show from Argentina called The Ethernaut. Have you guys heard about this? It's on Netflix.
Oh.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things.
Man, the first 2 episodes are bangers. That is a good show so far. Have you seen this one, Eunice? You're not.
Yeah, I watched it. Yes, I did.
Yeah, it is really good. And it looks like I don't know because I'm only 2 episodes into it, but it looks like it's kind of like a weirder War of the Worlds, which is good because we had a very non-weird War of the Worlds come out this year too.
Amazon saves the world.
Oh, that's the Amazon one.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but I want to because everyone says it's so terrible.
I've seen the clips. It looked great. It looked really stupid.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I feel like I have to see it now that everyone talks about how bad it is. But yeah, this show from Argentina so far the 2 that I've seen are great, and it's off to a great start. And I know I found on Tubi, there's a Russian alien invasion show called Blackout that's all on Tubi, and I want to watch that too, but I got to make sure it's not dubbed because I will not watch it if it's dubbed. And if I can get it subtitled, I will watch it. But it is cool that these things are out there. Eric, you have something we might have missed?
Oh, going last after everyone else. It's kind of fun hearing everybody else's takes because I think, oh yeah, I really like that one. I really like Pandorum that Mike mentioned, and I was immediately going to say Solaris as well. David, you started off.
No, I talked about the book. I don't know the movie very well. If you're,
no, I agree. I always have enjoyed the book. The George Clooney movie, I loved. I just thought it was just so beautifully shot, and the soundtrack just enriched the story.
Well, my thing about the Soderbergh George Clooney version of Solaris is that it's like they did 1/3 of the plot, right?
Yeah. that's kind of that's the same with any movie made off of a novel. It's
Yeah.
it's very truncated. But still,
Yeah.
it came across as very haunting.
Yeah, and they kind of like narrowed the scope of the story in a very thin way. And actually, the best adaptation of Solaris is there was a BBC radio drama based on Solaris,
Mm.
and it's very good. If you get a chance to listen to that, I recommend that one. But Solaris is good shit.
It is.
And I like pretty much every version I've seen of it, and it's funny because I just Solaris, it's so powerfully done, in my opinion. But Liam, the other thing too is he was writing in Polish, so like we're dependent on translations. And the greatest humble brag that ever happened on this podcast was I had Ray Naylor on, who's the author of a great science fiction novel from a couple of years ago called Mountain in the Sea. And he said, and he's so annoyed with me bringing this up all the time, but when I talked to him about Lem, he said, "Oh, well, I try to read them in at least Russian because this is close to the original intention." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's so awesome that you can read it in Russian." And I thought it was such a great humble brag. I don't know. I just thought that was hilarious, but
yeah,
that's a really good one too. If people need a recommendation of a recent science fiction novel, Mountain in the Sea is about octopuses developing a language to tell us to cut it the fuck out. And
he's an amazing short story author. I've only read his short works, but
yeah, that novel is incredible. And he just won the Hugo for a novella called Tusks of Extinction, which is very good too. And we've covered on this podcast as well. And Ray has been on the Dickheads podcast as well. So I've interviewed him a bunch of times, and I really think he's awesome. Okay, we've gone already for more than an hour. So I don't know, like, what would we like to see? What would we like to see? Oh, another one we didn't mention. Nobody mentioned Pitch Black.
Yeah,
Pitch Black.
I was going to. Yeah. That's a fun one for sure.
Yeah, actually, I had a few others too. I didn't want to sell myself short. Jason X, man, Jason X is like the best space horror movie. It's funny, but it has a really rich, well done plot, and it's just such an exciting movie.
Yeah.
And Jason X, and then also the Leprechaun series, the whole Leprechaun franchise. They have Leprechaun in outer space too, and that's actually a real fun movie.
I worked on Leprechaun 2 and 3.
No kidding, yeah.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah. And we can't forget also Hellraiser went to space too.
Yeah.
Everyone goes to space.
They all went to space in the 90s.
Eventually, yeah. You have enough movies in the franchise, they don't know what else to do with it. Send them up in outer space.
Mm-hmm.
Fast and Furious went to space, right?
pretty much.
Let's talk about Lost in Space, right? Growing up with that.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Loving
dear boy.
Well,
yeah, the old
the Outer
Twilight
Limits
Zone
did
episodes.
A lot of really great space horror episodes as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was what is it? The Mario Bava Planet of the Vampires.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
They had that. Yeah, the John Carpenter movie, Ghosts of Mars.
I worked on that one too.
No kidding, Michael.
Yeah, we shot that.
We did a podcast after the Mike McCarty movie that you worked on story.
Mike has his own podcast. Mike, you should tell him about your podcast.
I do.
Yeah, please do.
I have a podcast. It's a movie review podcast that I do with my brother. It's called The Head, the Tail, the Whole Damn Thing. My brother is an actor, and of course, I've been doing makeup effects for 30 years. So we always pair a brand new movie with a classic movie. So like the one that just came out was Megan 2 with Deadly Friend, Wes Craven's Deadly Friend. We did like 28 Days Later with 28 Years Later. It's always something older and something newer. And it's a lot of fun. We're both kind of stupid and funny. And I bring up a whole lot of behind the scenes stuff stories maybe people don't know about, because I know a lot of people in the industry, and there's always like, hey, here's how they did that. Here's how they exploded what's her name's head in Deadly Friend. If you've ever seen Deadly Friend, the famous basketball kill. You just type that in, basketball kill, Deadly Friend, go to YouTube, it'll blow your fucking mind. Yeah, you can find us anywhere.
Googling it right now.
Nice.
Yeah, that was one that they were writing about Deadly Friend for so long in Fangoria before it actually came out that Deadly Friend was a bit of a disappointment, but the basketball scene did not disappoint.
Yeah. That movie was supposed to be, Wes Craven went and saw Starman, Carpenter's Starman, and decided he wanted to make his own kind of sci-fi, drama thing. And he found that book Friend.
Right.
And it's basically about some kid. He gets a young girlfriend, and she's got an abusive stepfather or an abusive father, and she ends up dying. And he's like some super genius that has built a robot, and his robot gets destroyed, and he takes the chip and puts it in her to sort of bring her back to life. And when test audiences saw that, they went, Wes Craven, where's the horror? Where's all these sequences? And he ended up going back and reshooting all of the death scenes into something like violent and weird and fucked up, like the basketball sequence. And that was originally supposed to be a completely different movie.
He's like, John Carpenter got to make a rom-com. Why can't
I?
Exactly. Yeah. Which is, Carpenter got to space, but Wes Craven could have probably made a really good space horror
totally
movie. That's unfortunate we didn't get that.
The Thing is fantastic sci-fi horror, but as Eunice pointed out, it takes place on Earth.
A lot of good horror takes place on Earth. Even a drama
in November, it's going to take place on Earth. So the internet tells me.
Yeah. Well, the thing about cosmic horror is a lot of it is the universe reflecting back onto us on Earth. So that is why we get that. But and it should be no surprise too that for me, I think The Thing is I'm one of the few people that likes The Thing a little bit better than Alien, although of course I love Alien.
Fantastic.
I love Alien and Aliens. I struggle with the rest of the franchise. Although I personally, it's funny, I'm one of the few people who defends Prometheus, and I get shit thrown at me all the time. But I prefer Prometheus to Covenant.
I don't think Prometheus is terrible. I also like the third one, the David Fincher one, Alien 3. I like that one a lot, especially what they call the assembly cut.
Yeah.
Which is before the studio got in and started going, here's what you need to do.
You're right. Well, and Alien Earth for me, the xenomorphs are my least favorite thing about it. But
it's so well done that they're able to get away with xenomorphs being the least interesting part, and you don't care because everything is so interesting.
Yeah.
I know I'm a PKD guy, and the artificial people are a huge part of the other thing of it. I will say this. I do not want them to connect it to the Blade Runner universe, because that to me doesn't make sense. But
they already are, right?
I know they kind of are.
The first episode.
Yeah.
Do they mention the Tyrell Corporation?
They mentioned the synths in the. I think one of the corporations is supposed to, because when Prometheus came out, the DVD extras, they were trying to link Blade Runner to the Alien universe.
Yeah.
The problem is it's two different studios, and that might help us keep them apart, because Warner Brothers and Alcon own Blade Runner and FX and 20th Century, and now Disney owns Alien. So hopefully, to me, I want them to stay apart. I want them to do their own things. And but yes, I think Alien Earth, to me, the most interesting thing about it is the synth storylines and the robotic stuff. But artificial people is one of the themes I spend a lot of time reading, exploring, and researching. So of course, it's catnip for me. So But I mean, does anybody hate Alien Earth here? Because a lot of people do.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time. I might need a little bit more time to get through it. Yeah.
Have you watched all 4 so far?
No, I haven't.
Mm.
I struggled with one. It's like, oh.
Yeah. So episode 4 to me has the most important stuff. And the fact that it's the guy from the Young Ones that plays the corporate.
Yeah, it's Viv,
enforcer. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy.
Well, definitely watch it now.
Yeah.
The first 2 episodes are very different from the second batch of 2 episodes. The first 2 episodes very much are feeling like, okay, we need to throw the xenomorph front and center. But once that kind of bombastic opening is resolved, then they get to explore a lot of the more interesting science fiction elements that are not just xenomorph. And that's where it's, I think, really taking off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, the best scene of the whole series so far is the scene between the guy who played Viv, the corporate enforcer, and the brother of the young woman who got turned into the hybrid synth thing. That confrontation where he's like, do you want to stay here and help your sister, or do we fire you now and you owe us for this lung that you got? That whole confrontation, that whole argument is one of the best scenes of dialogue I have seen in a long time, and it was so wonderfully acted, directed, and everything. I thought that was great. So
I really enjoyed the scene where the synth is talking to, for lack of a better term, her therapist, and kind of goes off. Like, I don't want to give it away for spoilers, but I thought that was a pretty intense scene where she kind of snaps a couple of times during their talk.
Yeah, they're giving all of the hybrids interesting plot lines.
They are
making sure that they all feel well-rounded and that they all have something that is going on with them. And so far, it's interesting with every one of them that we've seen.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys have me sold. I'll go back to it.
All right.
Yeah, you got to stop thinking of it as an alien show and start thinking of it as a robot show. And just like that, Alien was the excuse to do this. And like, as they fade out the xenomorphs from the storyline and get into more of the synth stuff, it gets much more interesting.
It's definitely a corporate show.
Yeah. But you're talking to a guy who thinks the Foundation TV series on Apple is 1,000 times better than the Asimov novels, which I honestly don't know how anybody would argue that, because the Asimov novels are not. They are a great idea, horribly executed, and even Isaac Asimov agreed with that by the time he died, because I mean, he was a young writer when he wrote them. So, and by the way, it was just an assignment from John W. Campbell. Like, you know, it was just like, here's my idea, go write it, Asimov. So, I mean, he didn't even, Foundation, his most famous series, started with somebody saying, here's an idea, go write it. and which, by the way, happened a lot with Campbell. Campbell would just, people would walk into his office and he'd hand them ideas because he stopped writing. So that, you know, he was an editor. All right. On that note, does anybody have any like final comments they want to make about this anthology or about space horror in general? I'm opening the floor here.
Buy the book.
Yeah.
It's good. Read
Give
it.
us money.
Thanks, Eunice, for heading it up.
Yeah. Thank you, Eunice, for all your work.
Oh yeah, thank you, Eunice. This was fun to finally get working in the sci-fi genre.
You guys were the best to work with. It was a great experience.
Eunice, should we talk about the code word that goes through every single story, or do we leave that to be a surprise that people discover later?
Oh, let's just say that there is a code word, and you need to buy the book, and you need to find that thing that goes through every story.
There's something that is in
send us an email. Absolutely. In some way, shape, or form, it's in every story. Yeah, that is the listener's game to play.
Well, and I think that's a really fun and cool way to do an anthology. I have a story in Michael Allen Rose's Motel Sick anthology coming out, and it all takes place in the same motel, and we were given all these details about who works the desk, and there's an Arby's next door, and then we all got a room to write. And then, like, for example, I was told was like, okay, you have room 12. The next room over is the screaming infernal flames of hell room. And I was like, okay. So
is there a connecting door? Or?
There is no connecting door to the screaming infernal flames of hell room. But yeah, I'm very
Is it a La Quinta Inn?
It's a red roof.
The Motel 666.
Well, yeah, pretty much. But I will tell you that my addition to the lore of the whole thing is that I got to create it was my addition that the Arby's had one of those old school Arby's hat signs.
Yeah.
And that was my addition to it. But to the motel that became canon. But my room is in it. Room 12 is a time traveling motel room. So look forward to that, folks.
It really
I don't know what everybody else did for it, but
I was
apparently there's an infernal screams of hell room.
I know what I was going to say. The book comes out September 20th, and it's on pre-order right now for only $2.99. After that, it goes up.
Nice.
So,
right. Okay. And there will eventually be a print edition as well, too?
Yes, it should be pretty much simultaneous. I tried to do the ebook first and then roll out the paperback.
Got it. All right. On that note, we'll go around and tell everybody where they can find you. Eunice, where can they find you if you want them to find you?
You can find me at my website, esmcgill.com, and I primarily sell through Amazon.
Yep. All right. And Mike?
You can find me at mikedmccarty.com, and the podcast is The Head, the Tail, the Whole Damn Thing. It's on Apple, Spotify, pretty much YouTube, anywhere you could find a podcast.
Vincent?
You can find me anywhere on social media at Vincent Vina Cava. Yeah, buy my books or give me money or something.
Where do you think people should start with your books?
Well, I got something. I tell you what, I do have something kind of interesting coming out at the end of September. But I can't talk about it yet. I'm under a contract, so I'm not allowed to talk about this drop. But it's going to be weird, and people might be kind of pissed at me, but we'll find out.
All right. Looking forward to finding out what that is. Kathryn?
You can find me at kathrynblanche.com. Also, my social media profiles are listed on there. And my fantasy novels, the Layla of Midgard series, are available pretty much wherever books are sold.
All right. John?
Yeah, my website is johncohnauthor.com. You can find my books on Amazon or on my website. And if you like board games and if you like Dexter, then at the end of September, there is a game I made coming to Kickstarter called The Bad Side of Town, where you are a group of serial killers who are teaming up to take on another serial killer who is threatening to ruin it for the rest of us.
That's amazing.
Eric?
Like everyone else, my website is my name. So www.ericjguinard.com. Find my books, explore them, read them, review them.
And Eric was on a previous episode talking about the primer series of books that you do, and I recommend that episode and that series of books.
Oh yeah, thank you. That reminds me that those books would be under my publishing website, the press of darkmoonbooks.com.
Yeah, and if for some reason that you happened on this and don't know who I am, if you're just looking for space horror, I'm David Agranoff. I co-host this podcast and Postcards from a Dying World. I host this one by myself, and I co-host the Dickheads podcast covering Philip K. Dick. And we are almost done covering all of his novels. We've been doing it for a long damn time. But what you should know is that next year I am helping organize the Philip K. Dick Festival in Fullerton, California, bringing the fest back to California. And we are going to have a short story contest for Pink Beam inspired fiction, and we're going to have a screenplay contest, and we're going to have a bus tour of all of Phil's sites and locations that he wrote about or lived at in Orange County. We're going to have an academic conference, and then if all goes well, we're going to screen Blade Runner in the Bradbury building.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
To close out the fest. It is going to be a huge deal. It is next August 20th through the 23rd. It is 1 week before Worldcon, also in Orange County. And we are also going to have a pop-up museum at the Fullerton campus of sci-fi collectibles, fanzines, and manuscripts. So have you ever wanted to hold the straight from the typewriter red pen version of Dune in your hands? Well, you can do that at the pop-up museum. We'll have Man in the High Castle and a whole bunch of other manuscripts that you can see for real.
Really cool.
So we have really cool stuff planned. So keep your eye out for details of the Philip K. Dick Festival next August. I'm going to mention it every episode from here until then, and make sure that people join. If you don't even like Philip K. Dick, but you live in Southern California, there are going to be all kinds of cool ways that you can get involved and maybe meet cool people and ideas. So please keep your eye out for that. We will also need volunteers. That will be a big deal. And yeah, so that's going to be all on the Fullerton campus next year, except for, of course, the Bradbury screening to end it. So on that note, space horror, get the book. And thank you everybody for joining today. We will see people next time. I think the Science Fiction Hall of Fame will be our next episode, and you'll probably scream at me when it's not. So I will bring it back. I promise. I swear to God. Thank you everyone for joining us, and
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for coming, everybody, and we'll see you next time.